Marcus Wellington had built his empire from nothing, transforming a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation that dominated 3 continents. At 38, he was known throughout the business world as a man who never made mistakes, never showed weakness, and never let personal emotions interfere with profit margins. His corner office on the 42nd floor of the Wellington Tower was a testament to his success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, awards lining, mahogany walls, and a desk that had hosted meetings with presidents and prime ministers. Yet for all his achievements, Marcus had grown increasingly isolated, surrounded by people who wanted something from him but never truly seeing who he was beneath the expensive suits and commanding presence. Emma Rodriguez had been his executive secretary for 3 years, a position she'd earned through sheer competence and an uncanny ability to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. She was the daughter of immigrants, working 2 jobs to put herself through night school for her MBA while managing the complex schedule of one of the most demanding executives in the city. Unlike the parade of assistants who had come before her, Emma never fawned over his wealth or status. She treated him with professional respect, but maintained a refreshing honesty that both frustrated and intrigued him. She would politely but firmly push back when his demands were unreasonable, suggest more efficient solutions to his problems, and somehow manage to humanize the corporate machine that surrounded him. Her small desk outside his office had become a sanctuary of sorts, the one place in the building where genuine warmth could be found amidst the cold efficiency of corporate success. On that particular Thursday evening in November, Marcus had returned to the office unexpectedly after a dinner meeting had been canceled. The building was nearly empty, with only security guards and a few workaholics remaining in the dimly lit tower. He'd forgotten some important contracts in his desk and needed them for an early morning flight to Tokyo. As he approached his office, he noticed light spilling from under the door to the small adjacent room that served as Emma's workspace and storage area for confidential files. Assuming she'd simply forgotten to turn off the lights, he used his master key to enter through the connecting door, intending to switch them off himself. What he discovered stopped him completely in his tracks. Emma was sitting on the small couch in the corner, still in her professional attire, but with her shoes kicked off and her usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. Spread across the coffee table and floor around her were dozens of photographs, documents, and what appeared to be legal papers. She was crying quietly, her shoulders shaking as she held a photograph in her trembling hands. The sight of his composed, always professional secretary in such a vulnerable state shocked him more than any hostile takeover or boardroom confrontation ever had. For a moment, he stood frozen, unsure whether to retreat quietly or announce his presence. But something about the profound sadness radiating from her made it impossible for him to simply walk away. Emma looked up at the sound of his footsteps, her eyes wide with embarrassment and fear. She quickly began gathering the scattered papers, apologizing profusely for being in the office so late and promising to clean up immediately. But Marcus found himself moving closer instead of backing away, his usual businesslike demeanor completely abandoned. He could see now that the photographs were of a small house with a foreclosure sign prominently displayed in the front yard, and the legal documents bore the letterhead of a law firm specializing in estate settlements. The photograph in her hand showed a woman who shared Emma's warm brown eyes and gentle smile, standing in a garden filled with vibrant flowers and vegetables. "My mother," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible as she clutched the photograph. "She died 6 months ago, and I've been trying to save her house ever since. She left it to me, but there are medical bills, legal fees, property taxes I can't afford on my salary. I come here after hours sometimes to work on the paperwork because I can't bear to do it at home. I'm sorry, Mr. Wellington. I know I shouldn't be using company space for personal matters." I'll pack everything up right now and it won't happen again." The raw pain in her voice cut through Marcus in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Here was a woman who had quietly managed his professional life with grace and efficiency while simultaneously fighting a battle that would have crushed most people. He thought about all the late nights she'd stayed to help him prepare for crucial meetings, all the weekends she'd worked without complaint, all the small kindnesses she'd shown him that he'd barely acknowledged. She had never asked for anything beyond her modest salary, never hinted at her struggles, never used her position to seek favors or special treatment. The realization of how little he truly knew about the person who had become indispensable to his daily life hit him with unexpected force. Instead of leaving or offering some perfunctory words of sympathy, Marcus found himself sitting down beside her on the small couch. For the first time in his adult life, he set aside thoughts of schedules and profit margins and simply listened as Emma told him about her mother's long battle with cancer, about the small house where she'd grown up that held every precious memory of her childhood, about her desperate attempts to work with banks and lawyers to find a solution that would let her keep the family home. She spoke about her mother's garden, how she'd taught Emma to grow tomatoes and roses side by side, how she'd worked 3 jobs to send Emma to college, how she'd never lived to see her daughter's success in the corporate world. As the hours passed, something fundamental shifted between them. Marcus began sharing stories he'd never told anyone about his own humble beginnings, about the loneliness that had grown alongside his wealth, about the relationships he'd sacrificed on his climb to the top. He talked about his parents, who had died in a car accident just as his first company began to show promise, how he'd thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with the grief, how success had become both his greatest achievement and his prison. Emma listened without judgment, offering the same gentle attention she brought to everything in her life. And for the first time in years, Marcus felt truly seen by another person. When the sun began to rise over the city skyline, casting golden light through the office windows, they were still talking. The crisis that had brought them together, the foreclosure notice that would force Emma to lose her mother's house within 30 days, had led to a solution that surprised them both. Marcus had quietly made some phone calls, not as a grand gesture or display of wealth, but as a friend helping a friend preserve something irreplaceable. He arranged for the debt to be purchased by one of his holding companies and restructured into manageable payments that Emma could handle, allowing her to keep the house while maintaining her dignity and independence. But the real transformation went far deeper than financial assistance. In those quiet hours before dawn, 2 people who had worked side by side for years had finally truly met each other. Marcus discovered that beneath Emma's professional competence was a woman of extraordinary strength, compassion, and wisdom, someone who had faced devastating loss without becoming bitter, who had struggled with overwhelming challenges without losing her essential kindness. Emma saw past the intimidating executive persona to find a man who had achieved everything he dreamed of yet felt profoundly disconnected from the world around him, someone who had forgotten how to form genuine human connections in his relentless pursuit of success. Their relationship evolved gradually over the following months. Marcus began asking Emma's opinion not just on scheduling and logistics, but on major business decisions, discovering that her insights were often more valuable than those of his highest-paid consultants. She had an intuitive understanding of people and motivations that complemented his strategic thinking, and their professional partnership became more collaborative and effective than ever before. Outside of work, they developed a friendship that slowly deepened into something more profound. Marcus started visiting the house Emma had fought so hard to save, helping her restore her mother's garden and learning to find peace in the simple act of growing things. Emma introduced him to a world beyond corporate boardrooms, showing him the satisfaction that came from genuine community involvement and personal connections that, weren't based on wealth or status. The accidental encounter that night had revealed to both of them what they had been missing in their carefully constructed lives. Marcus realized that all his success meant nothing without meaningful relationships, while Emma discovered that her strength and capabilities were recognized and valued by someone whose opinion she respected. Their love grew organically from mutual respect and genuine understanding, built on a foundation of shared experiences and complementary strengths. When they married 2 years later in the garden behind Emma's mother's house, surrounded by friends who had watched their relationship blossom, it marked not just the union of two people, but the transformation of two lives that had found completion in each other. Years later, Marcus would credit that November evening as the moment his real life began, when success finally gained meaning through connection with another person who saw him not as a symbol of achievement,